Virtual Financial Team Prosperity Tier 5 Training. The Tier 5 is the back half of a financial needs analysis. Remember, in the Tier 3, we've introduced our company in terms of Virtual Financial, who we are, what we do, why, how, the dramatic market need for a company like us with a model like this in this industry that leads up into some discussion of some basic 101 concepts, and then further leads into actual gathering the data from the client, put into the software that leads into the Tier 5. The Tier 5 is the presentation of the report and any recommendations or next action steps associated with that, is up to the consultant. So let's talk about the report. The report can be anywhere from about 17 to as much as 25 pages long, depending on how much information you got from the client. Income, debt, assets, etc. It's color, illustrations, graphics. Remember, we lead with free financial education. Whatever comes out of the back side of that depends on what the current situation looks like, goals and dreams, resources, etc. So front page right here, first page, not too much to talk about. It's going to be prepared exclusively for the individual or the individual and the spouse. Now, if there are children, not listed on this page, but a subsequent page. Page 2 is the normal legal disclosure that any advisor, agent, or planner needs to make their client aware of. They're going to get a copy of this. It's right here in black and white. I highlight three main things. Number one, all rates of return are hypothetical, not a guarantee of a future performance of any asset. That's pretty straightforward language. People are used to that type of language these days. Second and third thing are more along the lines of Virtual Financial. Second thing is the report that we present and any recommendations we make off that report are only going to be as good as the information we gather from the client. So the better job they do in the Tier 3, better job we can do in the Tier 5 with the report and any recommendations that we make off that report. And the last thing is, number 3, we will answer general tax questions. More specific tax questions need to be geared towards someone like a CPA, and we do have several of those in the organization. So if you need, just ask. But in a nutshell, that's basically what this disclosure says. Page 3, this is going to give you a bird's eye view of the household. So in this particular report, there was a husband, there was a wife, and there were 2 small dependent children under the age of 18 that were still in the house. Page 4, these are the goals and dreams, and you'll find a lot of what we call the filler language for these reports is right there. So you're just kind of following the structure, following the flow of this report. The only variable will be the data coming from the client. So most dreams in life require having money to achieve them, whether it's buying the new home, the new car, taking a trip, sending kids to college, or retiring in comfort. But skyrocketing costs, mountains of debt, lack of savings, and really a lack of understanding about how money works has forced people to downsize or even eliminate their dreams. We believe that you shouldn't have to compromise. Instead, we advocate taking a practical approach to finances, one that incorporates powerful financial concepts as well as programs to provide you with the information and the tools needed to make smart choices. Using a financial needs analysis program, our agents work with people like you every day to create personalized financial strategies to help you move from dreaming to doing. The last time we met, I asked you to identify some goals and dreams you hope to achieve. Here's what you told me. So we have the goals broken down into 3 sections. Short term, which is 1 to 3 years, mid-term, which is 3 to 7, and long-term, 7+. So in this particular report, we were looking at getting a new automobile, short-term goal, education funding, and starting a business. I believe they were starting a consulting business. Midterm, education funding bled over into the midterm just because of the differentiations in ages between the 2 children. Reduce or pay off the mortgage, and finally, longer term, build retirement wealth. So typical goals that come up time and time again. Really, 5 to 7 is the sweet spot for the goals, mixed up according to, what they want, how much time needs to be devoted to get there. Page 5 is going to introduce the building blocks of the report. The strategy. There are 6 building blocks. What we do is we introduce them here. We analyze them for the client's unique situation, and then we end the report on making any next action steps are suitable recommendations. Client just needs to understand, for cash flow, there's only two ways to manipulate cash flow. You've got to earn more money or you've got to manage your expenses better. And that leads us into debt management. We as consultants want to see our clients consolidate debt, strive to eliminate debt. If we can take somebody from a debtor to a saver to an investor, we've done a great deal of good just in those stepping stones to help the client out. Emergency fund. By the time we get to this, we've talked about this several times in the Tier 3. It's important to prepare for those small emergencies, to have earmarked allocated resources so that we don't have to go into debt or prematurely attack assets. 3 to 6 months of income or expenses. This software allocates 3 months as the metrics to shoot for, and that'll be reflected when you see the emergency fund. Proper protection and asset accumulation. This is what we do from the product side mostly. We want to, first of all, properly protect. Protect against loss of income. Protect against family assets. Really, with the living benefits we can offer our clients now, it's a standard of living or a quality of life protection. Once properly protected, we want to roll over into asset accumulation. That makes sense in vehicles that outpace inflation, minimize taxation, and really provide a professional money management approach to get them to their end goals and dreams. Now, some people want to skip protection, roll into asset accumulation. It only works until it doesn't work, meaning whatever accumulated assets you have, if you're not properly protected and you're hit with a life event or a death event, those assets are going to get attacked. So proper protection before asset accumulation. And then, of course, we always want to have the estate preservation conversation, reduce estate taxes, build a family legacy that's going to go to the right intended heirs with as much intact as possible. Now, one thing I will note here, estate preservation is the last building block. It's also used very effectively to open conversations. If you are out there marketing to families with children, at bare minimum, if they don't have a will, they need one in place to provide specific instructions on what happens to those children. We have an affiliate company, Net Law. They build online digital vaults. If you lead in with that and they don't have one, it's hanging over their head, but they think it's going to be expensive, confusing, and nobody likes to talk about the death talk. The online digital vault meshes very well with our digital model, and then by leading with that, showing what goes in the digital vault, insurance, retirement, etc., you can expose other deficiencies. So don't always use estate preservation as a last topic of conversation. Cash flow summary. So we're going to break these building blocks down. There was $14,000 in monthly earned income for the household. There was expenses of almost $9,300. That's going to yield one of two results. Either a green box like this that will show you discretionary income. That's a leading indicator that, yes, there is money to put to work here to work on those goals and dreams. The other result would be a red box, negative discretionary cash flow, negative income. That would be in parentheses here. That's also going to give you a leading indicator that there's not money to put to work here, and sometimes what we have to do is do a preliminary step, debt elimination, produce more income, whatever it might be, to shore that up to get us cash flow positive where we start having money to put to work. It's broken down here. The only thing that I'll really show you, everything is straightforward. Savings is earmarked as an expense. So, for example, if this couple was negative 115, you need to be able to clarify that 115 is actually going into savings. So at the end of the month, you're in theory a net wash. It's zeroed out. In reality, you're putting some money away, paying yourself first, so a little bit better. Like I said, everything else is pretty straightforward other than that. And cash flow is the only building block in the report that we have 2 pages for. And the reason is, it's the first step in developing your financial strategy is to evaluate your cash flow. That's the money that comes in and goes out every single month. The money that's going to come in is going to be mostly from income sources like salary, but you do see asset sources like cash dividends and withdrawals. All needs to be included. And then this money goes for outgoing payments such as taxes, debt payments, lifestyle expenses, etc. Some of this we basically have to pay. It's fixed and essential that we label here as non-discretionary total. Other payments represent discretionary spending, which are expenses that we choose to have. It's the nice-to-have items, the wants, not the basic needs of everyday life. So they can be reduced to free up cash flow to put to work towards goals and dreams, or they can be dramatically reduced in an emergency situation if necessary. So let's take a look at the monthly cash flow for this particular household. It was a split income earning household. The husband made a majority lion's share of the money that came in, but the wife did have annual income as well. So you can see combined $168,000 of annual income, which breaks down to an estimated gross monthly of $14,000. So now one of the first things that we're going to be able to look at is an expense pie chart, which simply represents how do the expenses look chopped up in certain sections. If you remember in the Tier 3, auto and transportation, yes, that's a main section, but there were subsections: car payments, insurance, gasoline, service, parking, tolls, public transportation, etc. That's all added up and tallied to give us the main section. All of these are color-coded as reflected right here. This will give you and the client an opportunity to see, is there anything abnormal or atypical? If so, what's the issue? Sometimes we can identify and correct the problem. Sometimes we can just identify the problem. So you want to find out what's going on. And then the one that you want to take special consideration for is other debt servicing. That's the green, is represented by this part of the pie right there. That's what it costs the client to service their debt on a monthly basis. That's taking up too much of the pie. It's not going to stop. It's a bully. It wants to take up more and more, impede the ability to, make those other expenses. And basically what happens, this is a major leading indicator that somebody could have a debt problem that leads toward a debt default or possibly even a bankruptcy. So like I said, this will allow you to have the conversation. If there's anything abnormal, we can sometimes identify and correct, sometimes just identify, and then it's up to the client really to make the necessary changes. Debt management. So the effective use of debt can enhance your financial plans. On the other hand, very few things can derail your financial dreams faster than excessive, revolving, high-interest credit card debt. So we're going to talk about the good uses and the bad uses. Good uses of debt. There are situations where debt is not only a necessity but potentially smart. Debt can actually provide us with the flexibility and the convenience that can help manage our money and provide with lifestyle needs. However, even when we're using debt for quote-unquote good purposes, we've got to be mindful and take care that the debt balance doesn't outpace our ability to make the payments. Good uses of debt: purchasing a home, good use of debt. Purchase an appreciating asset or investment, an investment in their own or their children's education. Now, bad uses. This is going to be the biggest obstacle for achieving the desired lifestyle. Debt that spirals upward because of high interest charges, that normally is coupled with poor purchase decisions from the client. And like we talked about, it starts to strain that monthly cash flow. Large interest payments perpetuate the debt and consume more and more. And like we just talked about, it disrupts our ability to pay those other payments. Bad uses of debt, we really highlight credit cards here to supplement that negative cash flow, to pay for lifestyle needs. The debt balance gets bigger, the amount needed to service gets bigger, and one day we're not able to service that debt. Credit cards to pay other credit cards, that obviously is not going to be a game that lasts very long. And then credit cards to purchase depreciating assets. This is a big problem. Either something's totally 100% consumed, or it depreciates pretty close to zero, and we're still making those payments at 15, 18, 21% on the credit card. So be mindful about what's going on and help your clients be mindful of how debt is used and, if it's good or bad, and no matter what, making sure we're not over-leveraged. So we've taken the debt and separated it. Now we're going to bring it back together to analyze the debt. All debt, good and bad, must be analyzed together for proper debt management. Better debt management means better cash flow, and that means better financial planning. Debt management starts with examining your existing debt. You should examine each individual debt as well as the total overall debt. So we're taking a look at a couple of things. The total monthly debt payments for the house were $2,455. Total monthly earned income was $14,000. So that's going to give us a debt to earned income ratio a little bit over 17.5%. It's represented by this red piece of the pie right here. Now we're going to allow the client to see a debt to earned income ratio of 20% is considered average. The lower your debt to earned income ratio, the better your financial flexibility will be. Depending on your particular circumstances, a ratio above 20% or higher can be a sign that the credit's out of control. That could lead to difficulty obtaining future loans, and that could lead to a lower credit rating, cascading effect down to being unable to qualify for the best rates and terms. It's not as easy as just saying over under 20%. You have to be able to tell what debt is here. If it's above 20%, it's all unsecured debt. Yeah, it's a problem. It's above 20% and there's mortgage, there's student loans in there, not so much of a problem. And you're going to be able to tell on this very next page, like accelerating the payoff of your debt can be achieved by strategically applying regular additional payments. Becoming debt-free is going to take courage, resolve, and discipline applied over an extended period of time. Depending on the situation, that'll be the time period needed. However, that peace of mind, that sense of freedom that come from being debt-free are well worth the effort. Furthermore, you'll likely save significant sums in potential interest payments. It goes back to what we talk about. Instead of paying interest on debts, let's receive interest on savings and assets. Now, generally, you'll save the most by paying off the highest interest debts first. In other words, the consultant will build a hierarchy and identify what we call the most toxic debts. We'll make that recommendation, but sometimes clients find it easier to maintain the program if they watch a small debt wiped off the page entirely, just completely gotten rid of. Like I said, we'll make the recommendation, but we're also not going to stand in the way of progress. So let's take a look at what debts in the household. Auto loan, $6,500. 2 small personal loans to start the business at $9,000. Auto loan at $23,000. Government student loan, $55,000, and the 30-year fixed mortgage at $125,000. So if we look at this, we've got $180 out of the that comes from mortgage, student loans, which is home and education, which are good uses of debt. Plus, we're paying more than the minimum. So there's no real problems here, but if there were, we've got several different ways we can talk to the client about how to better this situation, how we're going to consolidate, how we're going to eliminate. When you eliminate debt, you give yourself a raise. So depending on what the situation is, what's the problem, we've got several different ways we can talk to people. The one I'll highlight right here real quick, this is going to be the consultant's call. Unless it's a dire situation where the only thing the client can concentrate on is debt elimination, we want to simultaneously work on savings and debt elimination. One thing to be debt-free, another thing to have a little bit of assets accumulated as well. Then we move on to proper protection overview. We have some revolutionary new innovative products that are new to the marketplace that are desperately needed in today's society. But we want to start with the common uses of life insurance, because when people hear life insurance, they instantly go here, final expenses. Of course, funeral, medical, if there's any associated probate or admin fees. But we also need them to know it protects the family, provides income replacement, education funding, disability funds, home property protection, protection of any business interest, and then depending on the vehicle, possible cash value accumulation. Also, people use it to manage debts, mortgage protection, settlement of individual, loans at death, consumer debt, and then to manage tax issues as well, property, income, and estate taxes. How much life insurance protection is enough? Our software goes into a detailed analysis, but there's a basic rule of thumb, about 10 times the family annual income. But even on the rule of thumb, other factors have to be taken into consideration, including their age, their medical condition, how many dependents they have, current income or financial status, and most importantly, why are we looking at insurance? So let me give you an idea about what our software does. Let's say we have spouse A and we have spouse B, and they both make $5,000 per month. And let's say it takes $4,000 to run the household. Well, if something happens to spouse A or B, yes, it will be a big loss for the household. But just on a mathematical viewpoint, the other spouse, A or B, should be able to fully cover that $4,000 in monthly expenses with their income alone. So in that case, there'll be little need for survivor income. On the other hand, if there's one income earner or it's lopsided, it'll be reflected accurately. So let's talk about the current insurable need breakdown. What you're going to find in household debts, 93.5. You're going to see that in both spouse analysis. That's because the software is not going to be able to identify if the debt dies with the debtor. So the household debts will be listed, Of course, the mortgage would be the same on both A and B. Same thing with establishing an education fund for the kids. Now, what you'll find is that the survivor income need varies greatly in this analysis because something happened to the husband. Remember, he earned a lion's share of the money. There's a significant need for survivor income to fill that gap so there's not a change in lifestyle. So you've got, at this point in his life, on a death benefit basis, a $665,000 insurable need. But remember, from the Tier 3, we were able to gather all of the insurance information. So he had an individual term at $250,000 right here. He had an IUL at $250,000 right here. And he had a small group term at the credit union for $10,000. So when you add all three of those up, you got $510,000 in place, enforced life insurance versus a need of $665,000. So on a death benefit basis, he has a remaining life insurance need just a little bit over $155,000. This will allow you to tell, is the client overinsured, underinsured, do they have no insurance? And don't forget, do they have the wrong kind of life insurance? Because, for instance, this Banner Life right here can easily probably be replaced, and I think we did replace this, to a term with living benefits. So if somebody's already got insurance, the reallocation of funds to a better vehicle is a suitable and ethical way to approach planning. There's nothing wrong with that. It's definitely a need to do that. Somebody can still medically qualify, and it's usually around the same price. If we get to them in a limited amount of time, since it was approved and issued, we can help them out. So now you look at spouse B, which happens to be the wife. You've got the same debts, the same mortgage fund, the same education fund, but something happened to her. Husband should be able to fully cover those monthly expenses with his salary. Now, the only gray area here would be if you have a couple, maybe only the husband or the wife works, the other one stays at home with the kids. Well, if there's, 2, 3, 4 small children at home, then you have to be able to take that into consideration because there's no income being produced by the other spouse, but there's significant value. So you have to take into consideration if that something happened, what would it take to replace that? Same thing here. She had an IUL at $100,000, a group term for $50,000. So she had a gross insurable need of $315,000, enforced life insurance of $150,000. So she has a net remaining life insurance need on a death benefit basis of $165,000 and change. So now what you're going to be able to do is go to this next page. And this is an important page because this is a major deficiency that I see in a lot of people. It doesn't matter whether you're talking to a W-2 employee, 1099 self-employed business owners. People need to learn to pay themselves first. One of the most important steps we can take towards financial independence is to pay ourselves first. Everybody has regular bills, regular expenses. If savings is a manual trigger, in other words, if there's any money left over, that's not a plan. What we advocate is paying yourself for that time, energy, resources, labor that went into whatever you were doing. Make a commitment to save a regularly save a specified percentage of your income or a specific dollar amount. Set it aside first and keep that commitment. The high cost of waiting. We are all wired to procrastinate. If you give us the opportunity, we'll kick the can down the road. But there's a high cost of waiting. Procrastination can be the enemy to your success in preparing for retirement or other future financial needs. Time can magnify the impact of growth and the compounding of your assets. The more time you have, generally the smaller amount of money you're going to need to set aside each and every month to reach your goals. Getting started is often the most difficult step of any strategy, and at any age it's going to be easy to find an excuse why we need to continue to kick the can down the road. So it doesn't matter, like we said, where we are in the life cycle. We're always coming up with excuses. Best age to start retirement savings is always now. I call this section politely confrontational. We're not going to berate or belittle somebody, but if I'm talking to somebody who's 45 or 50 years of age, these goals and dreams, if we're not close to getting there, whatever we've been doing leading up into this appointment obviously is not working. Past performance is going to be a leading indicator that we're not going to get there. So let's draw a line in the sand and let's create a better life for ourselves, financially speaking, in the future. Emergency fund. And, whether natural or man-made, disasters and emergencies can happen at any time. Even when a small catastrophe requiring cash can occur with little or no warning. The key is to be prepared for whatever life throws your way. So consider how you would pay for any of the following unexpected events. That's basically the summary of this page. Consider how you would pay for any of the following unexpected events. Major car repairs, home repairs, appliance replacement, job interruption, etc. You know, a good rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months. Remember, I said the earmarked allocated metric was 3 months in the software. This particular family has $6,500 a month in expenses, so that's a total target of $19,500. Now, we found out in the Tier 3 they had $35,000 in an emergency fund, another $1,000 in the checking account, so $36,000 is what they have saved versus the goal of $19,500. So you can see the analysis down here. The target is overwhelmed by the availability of funds. So we do have more than enough available, so there is no shortfall. If there was a shortfall, it would be reflected accurately here. Retirement need. Remember, in the Tier 3, our software default age is 65, but you can change that whatever you want, upside, downside, whatever the client is looking at as kind of a targeted retirement year. That's what we're going to base the analysis and the computations off of. Here, this couple planned on retiring at 55. Under this circumstance, on a married couple, first retirement need is going to be calculated in whoever reaches 55 first. In this particular instance, it was 12 years. Now, we do not want to include Social Security in this analysis for 2 reasons. One, we're doing an analysis at 55. But even if we were doing an analysis at Social Security age, my basic rule of thumb is 10 years. Over 10 years, don't count it. Under 10 years, yeah, let's count it and see what happens. So your desired lifetime or lifestyle for retirement breaks down like this. They basically wanted to take the expenses they have today, which equals $78,000 a year, prepare to pay those. So and this is today's dollars, remember. But in 12 years, with a built-in inflation rate of 3% compounded, the first projected annual income need for the retirement is approximately $111,000 and change. Now, obviously, the longer this goes out, the bigger this number blows up. If somebody's not understanding what's going on here, just revert to something in their childhood. Car, groceries, house, all we need to do is illustrate the fact that it's going to take more money in the future to have the same purchasing power of X today. So this has to be inflated to meet the future value. And we also have to take into consideration if there's any benefits, pension, other sources of income coming in at a later date, that's a future value. Here they're going to be receiving about $48,000 per year in the future. You've got to back that out and convert it in today's dollars. So you have to inflate the net entire retirement need in today's dollars to meet the future need, but you have to take these future value benefits, back them out, and convert them into today's dollars. 30-plus years of combined retirement, so we look at some numbers here. $1.623 million is the goal. Now, the projected balance of their current savings and plan contributions is less than $50,000. So we don't have much here as of right now. So what we have to look at is the net anticipated retirement savings shortfall, $1.574 million. Now we show the client, if you earn a 4, 6, or 8% rate of return, what do you need to save monthly to reach that goal? And always remember, we always, or this software, always assumes a pre-retirement growth rate of 6%. So beginning today, they would need to save about $84.50 per month to reach this goal over the next 12 years. Now, once again, this is not as black and white as it may appear. This particular company, they're starting a business. They should have some cash flow coming in for the business. Also, you have to evaluate the client. Are they young? Are their peak earning years ahead of them? Or are they 50-year-old W-2 where this is pretty black and white in terms of what they need to save? So you just have to be able to evaluate and make that call. I basically tell the client, this is a snapshot of where you are right now. Can get worse, can get better, depending on the decisions that you make today that can either save you or screw you in the future. Estate preservation. Remember, we talked about this early. We don't want to let a lifetime of successful savings be devoured by taxes, attorneys, and unintended heirs. That's where a proper estate plan can take care of our family during our life as well as after our death. Estate planning can help you develop a firm strategy for the proper transfer of your wealth. By minimizing the costs associated with that transfer, you can increase the amount passed down to your heirs. Keys to preserving the estate include having adequate life insurance. Life insurance is a great way to preserve the estate. Having a will, understanding the probate process in the state they reside, avoiding probate, understanding what a trust is, the importance of a trust, how to transfer assets through the trust, learn how to minimize estate taxes, and don't delay. This is another one of those situations where we're talking about the death talk. Not upbeat. This is one of those things that you also just want to get checked off the list. A very little sigh of relief. I've got this done. It's part of the consultant's job to help push them to get this stuff done to get it checked off the list. This page is the assumptions. This rarely, if ever, will be needed if somebody has a question about how you got to any calculation. We've got some basic breakdown of some assumed numbers in the software here. And then finally, the last page is the next action step. So we've gone through the front of the report. We went and introduced the building blocks. We analyzed the building blocks. Now we're going to make any suitable recommendations or next action steps. The first thing you want to know here is the fact that this is a PDF. In order to write on a PDF, Adobe wants you to subscribe to a PDF editor, probably 20 or 30 bucks a month. I don't know what it is. If you have it, great. If you don't have it, one of the things that you can do, because I want you to treat your company like a startup, especially in the beginning, not much out-of-pocket expense. So what you can do is up here at this toolbar, this quotation mark where it says add a sticky note, when you click on that and you put it actually in here, it's going to bring up a dialog box to the far right-hand side over here. From this point, whatever's in this lettering, whatever color and whatever it says, here it's blue RIGHT, when you right-click on that, go down to the very bottom, Properties. When you click on that, it's going to allow you to do two things, change the appearance and change the wording. So the appearance, depending on how you rated the cash flow, for this particular couple and household, they get a check mark. And then general will allow you, like we said, to change what appears as the verbiage. So cash flow analysis. And then when you hit OK, now all of a sudden you've got the cash flow analysis with the check mark. Now you're going to make your recommendation. For this particular couple, they were cash flow positive. So you are cash flow positive by, I think it was, $4K a month. Great job. You want to commend them on that. And now you want to make the recommendation. We're cash flow positive, so let's work on putting that cash flow to work for asset accumulation purposes. And when you do that and you hit post, now it's forever there. So now when you're going through with the client, you already have the recommendations. So you're saying, Mr. and Mrs. Client, cash flow. The recommendation that we have for cash flow is your cash flow positive by close to $4,000 a month. Great job. Let's work on putting that cash flow to work for asset accumulation purposes, because remember, we earmarked our peg 12 years from now as a retirement date. So this is definitely a suitable next action step for them. They're cash flow positive. We need to put this to work, asset accumulation, and we'll be able to make that recommendation towards the bottom. Debt management. So you'll be able to do the same thing here. You go back to the quotation mark, insert it, go over, right-click whatever's there, properties. If they had a debt problem, maybe it's a cross. All of this stuff is here. You can use it. They had no real debt management issues. They got a check mark, and I could change it to debt analysis. Once I do that, I can just put in the fact that something like, a majority of your debt comes from student loans and mortgage, which are good uses of debt. You're paying more than the minimum. Continue to try to chop this down over the coming years so we can enter into that retirement years not having to still service debt. Emergency fund. They would get another check here. It's fully met. If it wasn't, maybe we could put something down here. Remember, we really feel the emergency fund is important, so maybe we mark it with a star, and we do the emergency fund. And if they were not, if they didn't have this fully met, we would say something like, make sure over the coming months that you start to put in. Maybe we're allocating $200 or $300 a month towards this, and we give them, if you follow this pattern without any emergencies up leading to that date, you'll have the fund fully met by this date in the future. These three right here, cash flow, debt management, emergency fund, we have no products that we sell. People understand that. They start to get, the rapport there. They're understanding we're trying to actually, create something. We're demonstrating value, and it makes these last conversations a lot easier. So proper protection. So whatever you're going to recommend here, are they overinsured, underinsured? Do they have the wrong kind of life insurance? Whatever the recommendation is, you're going to make it there. That way when you hover over here, you got the recommendation for them. Asset accumulation, a good one to use for this one maybe is the key. That's the key to your future. So when you scroll over that, it's going to give them the analysis. And it's going to say this is the key to your future. We have a 1.574 million anticipated retirement savings shortfall. You're starting a business. You're cash flow positive. You've got debt under control. This is a heavy area of concentration for this particular couple because over the next decade we need to get a lot done. So this is where we're going to lay out the recommendation. What are we doing? Is it an IUL? Is it is there whatever we're doing? Annuities? Are we doing estate planning? That will be the next part. But really, whatever you're recommending here, you're going to lay it out right here. And the final thing is estate preservation. If they don't have a will, they don't have a trust, and they have a need for that, it's definitely a recommendation that we'll make. Maybe if they don't have needs for a trust now, but they're building something, we can go back and revisit. So this is a lead-in report that can always be updated in the future as you guys build that business relationship with your clients. So like I said, the structure and the flow of this report will always be the same. The only variable will be the data coming from the client. At this point, at this end page where you have laid out recommendations, you're going to be able to take the conversation in one of a few different directions. Most of the time I recommend, if you've made next action steps, product related, that you go in and build a little bit of value, demonstrate a little bit about that product. We do have videos, PowerPoints that can assist you in the training of those, but you definitely, just like in the Tier 3, we just didn't hop in and gathering data. We built value for the company. Same thing here. If you don't want to go from the F&A straight to a quote and illustration, you want to build the value of the product so the client can absorb that information. The more educated your client is, the better the sale is going to be, the longer it's going to stick on the books, the more referral business is going to open up for you. So depending on the product, depending on where you find the quote and illustration, depending on where you find the write-up, you have everything at your fingertips. So you could take a Tier 5 completely through the report, through the product knowledge, into the quotes illustrations, into the application, or you can take it, to a certain step and stop, and then have another follow-up appointment. So it's up to you on how you do this. You definitely want to make sure that you educate the client to the point where they're making buying decisions. You're not selling them things, because buying decisions from the client is much better. That means they've decided they want this, and they feel better about what went on, no buyer's remorse. And like I said, the longer that you can get these product sales to stick on the books, better for you, better you can teach your organization. The better persistency you have, the better it works out for everybody on multiple different levels and multiple different objectives.